Hello, and welcome to another Uptime FM episode. I'm your host, Sean C. Davis, and today I'm going to be joined by Henri Helvetica. Henri is the developer community lead at Web Page Test by Catchpoint. And today we're going to spend most of our time talking all about web page performance. Why is it important? How do we achieve it? How does your choice of tools and the tools that you choose to use in your website impact the performance? And why does all of that matter? So with that, let's not waste any more time and get Henri on stage. Thanks for being here, Henri.
Yo, 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 yo. I'm delighted to be here. Sean, thank you very much. Sean, I'm going to tell you something real quick. I mean, I know your last name is Davis because for a minute I was like, Sean C. David. Oh, no, it's Davis because normally I don't trust people with two first names, so I just want to let you know. But you passed. So we good.
Amazing. This is amazing. I won't tell anybody that,
It's all
occasionally Davis can be a first name. We just want to worry about it.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to talk all about performance and definitely want to get into there. But the first question, the most important question,
Okay.
what is the best sandwich?
Ooh. You know what? I don't know if it should be a tie. I'm gonna say this one real quick. Grilled cheese. It is an incredible sandwich that most people don't realize you can remix. I had one last night, actually. I'll tell you exactly what I did. You know, it had to be quick, so unfortunately, I just had to get some regular white bread, whatever. But I had some great marble cheese. Again, okay, but what I did add in between was a layer of, a couple teaspoons of um, spicy salsa, and
Salsa.
then I grilled it. It was real quick and easy. You know, surprise, surprise. I'm about a fast meal, right? So,
Okay.
and
Yep.
I had it. It was amazing. But if I have a little bit more time, I get a bit more gangster with it. I get some better cheese. I get some garlic butter. Thicker bread. Like I can go off.
You can go deep on the grilled cheese. Now, so some folks tend to be really opinionated on there's a line somewhere between what is a grilled cheese and what is a melt, if you will. So how much stuff can you put on a grilled cheese before it is no longer a grilled cheese?
Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, it's kind of like how people are disrespecting the Jamaican patty and putting like lettuce and tomato and stuff in it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the furthest you can go is maybe like one item. After that, I don't know. I may have to call the cops because, like I'll let you go with like bacon, potentially. You'd have to break it up too, like just break the bacon up and put that in. But,
Yes,
you know,
bacon bit.
yeah, I don't want to see like layers of stuff in there. It's not a, the cheese has to be the primary element. You know what I'm saying?
This is my opinion as well. Everything else has to support the cheese, right? It can't take away from that. Yeah,
Absolutely. That's it. It's a grilled cheese sandwich. It's not a sandwich with cheese on it. You know what I'm
exactly,
saying?
exactly.
So,
Actually, we have Nick hanging out in the comments, and he said he once heard of a grilled cheese sandwich where the inside was macaroni and cheese, and
no.
that's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
That will get you a Will Smith slap. You know what I
and
mean?
and
So,
probably a nap after that sandwich.
yeah, a nap on the ground. Uh,
Exactly.
no, 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 no. And I love mac and cheese. Don't get me wrong, but you can't start going crazy like that. You know.
Right.
Anyways,
Right. Right. Okay. Yes, we digress. Okay, so we're here mostly to talk about performance, and I mentioned some goals and things we want to accomplish in
yeah,
the intro there. But I think starting with that first big question and kind of setting the stage for the rest of the conversation is, why is performance important? Why should developers care about the performance of their website?
certainly. Great question. And there are several details that I can get into, but I'll start with a very simple and sort of rudimentary answer. Is that uh, the web today is not the web that we knew, say, like 10, 20 years ago, right? Um, I know a lot of people may have just grown up knowing the web, but it's actually still not really, it hasn't been around that long if you think about it. If you think about like technologies that are with us today that have long standing um, in sort of like the environment, um, the web is not really one of them. At least I don't feel. And we are not in the, basically, like I like to say, we're not in Kansas anymore. This is not Craigslist, with the simple like text and link, and you just get the information. Like, it is, the web has gotten a lot more complicated. And the one thing that I, strive to sort of reinforce to folks is that, roughly in 2016, give or take, you can pick and choose, what time of the year it was. I believe it was around fall. But, you know, the web was now being accessed by mobile primarily. There was that one moment, I think, like I said, in fall, where it just went from 50% even to like 50% plus one extra phone. And
Yep.
then
Yep.
now
It
it's a
never looked
lot.
back.
Ex- Never look back. Like, and that's what I want to make sure that people understand. The web is being accessed primarily by phone, and we are never ever going to say, you know what, let me go back to a desktop. Like, it's not happening. The computing power has, been so that the phone is a viable option to access the web. It's still not as strong as a desktop, and in many cases may not be for some time coming. But the point is that this is a fact. Now, currently, it's probably about 60% in terms of like access of the internet, mobile to desktop.
Okay.
But once you start to look at some of the sites like top 100,000, top 10,000, top 1,000, you start to get into these 80% type, numbers, like anywhere from 80 to 80%, I believe it is, from
So are you saying
100,000.
the more popular the website, the higher the percentage of mobile users on that site?
Absolutely. And thank you
Got
for
it.
clearing
Okay.
that up. As I was thinking, the data is available for you to read over at the HCP archive, the Web Almanac. I think it's in the mobile chapter, but they provide the data. So the more popular the website, the greater percentage of users are accessing it by mobile. So once you have that in mind, you have to realize that this is the sort of, portal of choice, which is the mobile device. And you have to basically build sites accordingly. And unfortunately, we've not been doing that.
Mm, okay. This makes sense. So, okay, well, I could keep going there. I'm sure we'll come back to that. Now, I one thing I've been thinking is that it seems like if I check the score both over time and in different places, that the score on one particular site can
Mhm.
change. And so the next question I would ask you is there one obviously you work at web page test, but is there one place we should go to get our performance score for our website, or one particular metric that we should care about above all the rest?
Good question. Metrics are very interesting, and they can be different things to different people. So we are talking about web performance, but I'll give you an example. uh, the number of viewers that are tuned into the stream right now is a particular metric. The number of um, plays this podcast will get, this presentation will get after it's recorded, is also an additional metric. So you have to figure out which is most important to you. Now, when it comes to particular metrics for the web, generally, and this is sort of like an accepted set of metrics, the core web vitals will really indicate to you generally how your site is doing, right? So the core web vitals, three particular metrics. One is the, what was once called the jank index, but is now called the CLS, aka cumulative layout shift. uh, that is a very clear indication of sort of like page jumping around. Again, a poor user experience if that takes place. We also have a interactive metric called the FID, first input delay, one that again more or less that deals with JavaScript and how it's interacting with you, the user. And then there's also another one called the LCP, which is the largest contentful paint, and that has to do with sort of like a some resources loading on to the viewport, and which is the biggest one, and how fast it comes in. Again, all relating to the user experience. So generally, the core web vitals will provide a sense of how the site is doing. Now, something that people need to also realize that the metrics that we have today, and we'll say even the core web vitals, are sort of years of research that's been done in sort of determining how to quantify a user experience. Because user experience could be like, you know, hey, my bread's not toasted well. That could be a bad user
Right.
experience, right? But in
But
this case, we're like, pardon me?
especially for the grilled cheese. Yes.
Exactly. you know but in our case, what is the user experience on a mobile device? All right, and we know what the pain points are. Some of them are visual, some of them are just sort of like, hey, this page is not interactive yet. Like, I see stuff on the screen, but when I tap this buy button or whatever, like I'm trying to get these Beyonce tickets that went on sale today, like that's a bad user experience if I can't hit buy. Or it might be a blank page for like a certain amount of time, and again, this is another bad user experience because you don't know what's taking place. Is the page loading? Should I refresh it? I don't know. So core web vitals will give you a sense of that. Now, obviously, there are many more metrics, some of them that you could actually customize yourself, but others that are out there, like, TTFB, time to first byte. We get, it'll give us an indication of how fast, the page is starting to populate the viewport, because you'll be able to see like, oh, we get a, early time to first byte. This is great. But then you might have some other challenges like a start render, where you're like, okay, I don't see anything taking place. I know I have a good time to first byte. What is holding this back? So there are many more that are actually out there right now, say that are part of a set of metrics that you may get, say, potentially from like a Lighthouse audit or a web page test audit, because we'll deliver a lot of metrics to really get granular as to what is taking place on your page. So in terms of like what's important, and what to sort of look for, I tend to sort of send people early to the core of vitals to see what exactly is taking place. But I believe in 2023, what was once a sort of like a stopwatch measurement is not really the case, because we're really getting granular in the A to B. Like it used to be A to B, now we're like A prime, A prime prime, B prime. So it's a lot different, and I realize that, but it's all for the better, obviously.
And so users, when you gave the button example, that makes a ton of sense to me. Like
Hmm.
if you can't get those tickets when you click the button, that's a problem. If you really want it, you're going to stick around. But for if especially if you're somebody who's just a startup or up and coming, and that button is crucial to your business. Yeah, okay, it feels fairly obvious to me, like that's a problem.
Mhm,
But the user got there.
mhm.
So how and if there's too much nuance here, tell me. But I'm curious. I occasionally hear different numbers around. Hey, if your time to first byte isn't X, then you lose X percentage. I mean, we obviously want to be fast, but is there some threshold where it's like, hey, if it's taking this long, then this is a serious you're actually going to lose this many people, or is it all it's just kind of a sliding scale?
I mean, luckily, there have been some studies in the past, and quite often enough, we sort of reference those, and it's not always. I mean, ultimately, with enterprise and anyone who's sort of like selling wares, goods, whatever it is, kind of product. Um, they mostly kind of keep to themselves. They keep the data internal. But so a long time ago, one of the earliest studies to come out was with Walmart, and they had done some work. And at the time, a good friend of mine, fantastic dude by the name of Cliff Rocker, had been working with them, and not for them but with them, and they'd released some studies and sort of expressed how much you know money 100 milliseconds was worth to them, right? And that stuck around. And in fact, I'm not, I mean, in the chat right now, but if you go to, dum, ba-dum, ba-bum, what was it called again? So there was a website that was put together by our director of engineering, Tim Cadlick, and another longstanding web performance specialist. Oh my God, Tammy Everts. What was it called? It's going to come back to me. But they posted a bunch of public research or companies that had shared data about what performance meant to them. What uh, improvements, what kind of improvements they made, and what that meant to them overall. And there's a lot of times, it may not be the actual money spent by a customer. It could be the money that you're saving by having better performance, right? So, you may have, once upon a time, these servers working overtime, and, you may not have had, gzip turned on by complete oversight. And that meant that, like, instead of sending, say, a meg of JavaScript like they are right now, uncompressed, you're sending 3,
Mhm.
so, and you take that at scale, things look a lot different, right? So, getting back to the idea of like what is important when it comes to like web performance and what does it mean and how to look at it, like it's about measuring everything, from the actual data that you send down the pipe to, again, equating that to some of the costs that you have. And then, I mean, some may disagree with this, but I don't always believe performance is about mistakes. They're really about oversights, and these oversights come about when you don't measure. And when you don't measure, it's kind of like via con Dios. You have no idea what's going on, and you get these bizarre results, but you never really measured. And if you had measured, you would have seen that something was awry, basically.
Yes, yes. Okay. Now, no, just a minute ago, you mentioned shipping a bunch of JavaScript to the client, which I know it's a very hot topic last couple of years. So can you talk for a little bit about that? And, is it like, are you someone who is totally against a framework like Next.js because they tend to ship so much JavaScript to the client, or is it more a matter of you just have to do a little bit more work to make that website fast? Like how should we think about the relationship between the frameworks we choose and the performance implications of those frameworks?
Absolutely. So I'm a big believer that you can make a lot of the, you can use a lot of the tools that are out right now, and make them and create good user experiences with them. Some may take a bit more work than others, but the fact is that you probably can. Now, I think one of the challenges just in, I think technologies overall, some are being sort of pitched as these turnkey operated, operations like, oh, just use it and it's going to do this magically on its own. Okay, maybe it will, maybe it won't. The data right now says that it won't, right? So I can get it. I don't have this in front of me right now, but off memory, uh, well, I will say this much. If you take the fact that um, the current Lighthouse score for the web, all right, is like anywhere from 31 to 32. All right. So we're comfortably saying that it's a failing grade. Uh, right now, for a bunch of these frameworks, the median Lighthouse score is also a failing grade. I'm not going to name anyone in particular, but I think I talked about it in the Jam Dev uh, talk I
Right.
gave recently,
Yep.
right? So, what could that mean? Well, it could mean a number of things, because I've always felt that sometimes people sort of like rush out products, they don't measure, they don't test. So this is what's happening when you don't. Okay, maybe something's not being explained right, in the documentation, because we all know how important documentation is. Okay, maybe also these docs or in general, performance is not being discussed as a priority, right? So we've been sort of performance has been playing a bit of a backseat to say developer experience, because we want the developer to have like this smooth experience and to sort of like go click and everything's up and going at the cost of what? Potentially performance.
Mhm.
And I get it. Performance is certainly not a shiny object that people want to pay attention to. Kind of like accessibility, right? People tend to sort of like take this in afterwards. Well, it should have been measured first. That being said, um, the numbers don't lie, right? We can go to the HTTP archive, we can go to the CWV report, where we can take a look at some of the data that's out there. So what we're seeing is that, yes, a lot of JavaScript is being shipped down the wire. All right. We're also noticing that a lot of JavaScript that is being shipped down the wire is going unused. All right.
Mhm.
So we are running at that point into several details that need addressing. Uh, First of all, JavaScript, and again, I'm not you know, dumping on JavaScript at all. It's an essential part of the web right now. It's the reason why the web is essentially an essential service, because we can do so much online. Let's get that out the way. But the problem is right now that we are shipping a lot of JavaScript down the wire. We also are mostly accessing the web through mobile devices. Mobile devices are not known to handle JavaScript that well. We're running into long tasks. We're running into situations where it's we're getting like these serious bottlenecks, and it's not providing the good user experience. Uh, so what does that mean? Well, we have to pay a bit more attention to what we're sending down the wire. Um, Fred, no, Fred, yes, from Astro.
Astro
Shot?
Fred.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Fred at Jamstack conference had mentioned that, I think his quote was something around that, we just didn't know how bad the performance was. Well, we just never paid enough attention to it in the first place, you know. So that being said, um, there is a solution out there, which is measuring performance. And, that's why, I've been on this crusade to sort of get people to think about it ahead of time, because, we've been given some fantastic tools to put out like amazing content online, but uh, it does feel like Ponderosa. There's a lot of food and we just don't know what to do with it, and we're filling our plate and throwing out a bunch of it afterwards. And we shouldn't treat the web like that, and it's creating a lot of challenges.
So Brian Rinaldi actually just said he thinks it's tough for a lot of teams who don't have teams that focus on this specific type of testing, and that kind of plays into what I was going to ask next, anyways, which was, um, okay, so we know we have to do this, or we're learning that we have to do this, and we will learn which metrics are most important to us in our business over time. But what advice do you have for I think in two parts. One, for teams to make it a priority, and two, um, any tips on like specific practices or routines, or where does the testing actually fit into the life cycle of building and maintaining a website?
Cool. Love the question. Love the question. Love the question. Um, I'll be very frank, and I've been sort of beating this drum since last year. It seems sort of like uh, puerile, but it's actually correct. I think part of it is performance literacy, right? Uh, Once upon a time, JavaScript was like this big bad wolf, and no one wanted to sort of like, oh man, JavaScript. Now there was a moment where suddenly people were like all in on JavaScript, and I understood. Like I remember years ago when uh, Matt Photomat, what's Photomat's last name? Anyways, WordPress Matt was like, hey, he started to tell his community, because when they were talking about Gutenberg, the very early parts of Gutenberg, is like, hey, learn JavaScript. Like this is like 2015, 2016, right? He was starting to put the seeds out. People got, went all in on JavaScript. And I think it's amazing because, again, it provides that amazing sort of opportunity for the web to become what it is today. Again, an essential service, I feel, because everything's possible. Now, what needs to happen is people need to realize that performance is part of, creating a better web, and understanding performance is going to be part of creating that better web. Again, I get back to what I said earlier. The days of what did I say? Craigslist are done. Like that's donezo. The web is extremely complicated. There are a lot of moving parts, and I think sort of like shutting your eyes is not going to be the solution. I'll give you a quick example. Part of being a sort of you know uh, sort of like being into performance and sort of like understanding it is constantly looking at sites. There isn't a site that passes by my desktop that I just don't open up and see what's running under the hood. For example, I'll do these very simple audits where I'll put them on my I'll tweet about them. And today's what, Monday or Tuesday? Tuesday.
Yep.
Tuesday. Okay, so Sunday, the Grammys were on, and there was all this hoopla about Beyonce. I was like, all right, let me check out the Grammy website. Well, apparently the Grammys don't look at their website because they sent like 26 megs of content. 26 megs, dude. Like on what planet is that permissible, right?
On the initial load, or is that you like scrolling down and images are loading as you're scrolling?
No, this was the initial load.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So that's what web page test will tell you. If it was being lazy loaded, it would show up as a lazy loaded sort of like a bit of content, and we would have like a 2 meg load. But this was 26 megs. There was one image that was 13 megs. All right. So this is about just measuring and understanding what should be taking place on a device. All right. In a user experience. There are several other details that I think I mentioned in my little audit. So the curiosity is also going to be an educational component to understanding performance, and sort of like seeing where there's some obvious low-hanging fruits and other areas that may not be super obvious, because again, web performance, the ability to get everything we can out of an efficient load that takes place needs a little bit of education. So I believe the literacy is important. Now, that being said, I talked about the fact that the web is a wonderful place in terms of like the capabilities, the tooling that we have. It does not take that much. It doesn't take a large team to look after a a sort of like a large site. I'll give you an example. Uh, I'm going to call them REI because I don't know how else to pronounce it. Uh, we're
Yeah.
talking a team of like 3 people. It might even be two, you know,
Okay. Okay.
and, you know, are they dedicated to it? Quite possibly. Like it might be 2 people that just look after the performance. But, with the literacy, it doesn't take like a team of like 15. You can have a team of 15 because you can sort of give people different roles and whatnot. But the literacy is going to enable you to make learned edits, learned changes to a site, but it also takes measurement, understanding what matters, understanding the details, and you'll be able to efficiently put something out that the world will experience in a friendlier nature.
So do you think is it more effective to have somebody who's focused only on performance, or more practical, or for it to be a part of everybody's job on the team?
I mean, what can what can you quote unquote afford? And I don't mean like in terms of like money, but can you have more people involved in the process? Because I'll tell you that given the opportunity, I think designers should understand performance a little bit more, right? Because some of their decisions coming down the pipe can help the engineering put something better. Like for example, a designer that wants to give you, 5 different fonts in the viewport on first load, I'll give you that meme there. It's like I don't know about that, because there are implications there that you have to consider. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible to not have 5 different fonts with 5 different weights, but does it, are they required? Think about it. And if they are, how are you going to make sure you efficiently load the 5 different fonts on the viewport on the first load? So you're giving yourself potentially more work. Hey, designers, they're particular. I get it, but there are implications there. So there's a lot of decision making that needs to take place. um, and getting back to the actual the number of people on the team, it can be 2 people, because someone is versed in all aspects of the performance. But if you expand it to like 3 or 4, someone's going to be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to look at this part of the page or that part or this, like the protocols. Is everything taking place that's supposed to take place, whatever. Because like I said, we are looking at performance now in such a granular nature that it does take a little bit of work. It's not like presto changeo, everything's solved. I got this image component, all your image issues are solved. It's not quite like that these days.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, now I want to transition to our next segment, but before I do that, one question to kind of wrap this up. So you said that it took many years to get where we are today in terms of the metrics and the approach that we're using to measure performance. Is this an ongoing evolution? Is it I don't want to be negative, but say like, is it a moving target? Like, is this something that's going to change, or does it? What do you expect to have happen in the next couple of years in terms of performance?
Fantastic question. I'm so glad you asked that. It is absolutely ongoing. Let me give you a quick example. Some of you may or may not know I'm a bit of a distance runner. And, um, you know, there was a once upon a time someone broke 10 seconds and we're like, we're here. It's like, no, we're not. All right. And there came a point where, all right, how do you go faster? Is it going to be the shoes? Is it going to be your diet? we're discovering this as we go along. We're now seeing that we're tweaking your cadence, your arm motion, like everything has to be in sync at the start. Like, for example, I've often compared track and field to web performance. And in track and field, especially the 100, if you mess up that start out the blocks, there's a very good chance you are not going to win. All right. In web performance, we are making discoveries with time, and I'll give you a quick example that could be researched. The core web vitals, one vital particular, the FID, was seen to be like not so much problematic, but not emblematic of what was taking place. And additional research led to the possibility of the FID being replaced by something else that's been discussed probably for the last year now, called IMP, which is interaction to next paint. Because the research led us down, or led Google down that path, and they shared the research with the community. So, what does that mean? Yes, web performance, the research, it's ongoing. Is it going to look like this a year from now? I'll give you the meme again. We're not sure, but we do know that the people who are involved and trying to make this work as best as possible are there grinding away so that we can sort of like understand what's taking place.
That's great. That's great. Yes. Love it. I'm excited. I feel like I need to go improve my website immediately, but
And
well, we got a few questions. Good. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, and uh, I'll tell people just to at least be curious. Like you may put your website out and you're like, yo, my website's live, go check it out. Everyone's happy. But under the hood, there's funny things happening. Like I said, I mentioned the Grammys, everyone's looking at the Grammys, like on their phone, watching the show, oh, laughing and all this stuff. But no one knew it was loading 26 megs. No one knew it was, there was a 13 meg PNG, and these are very important details. I mean, I'll say this real quickly. I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Chris Zacharias, who I did it in December, and on the 10th anniversary of a significant blog post that he had while he was working at YouTube, and they had been trying to lighten the landing page on YouTube over 10 years ago. And he made significant discoveries because he realized that people around the world were not able to access the content. And that's simply because the page was too heavy. And when he did edit the page down to, I believe, 14 requests under 100 kilobytes, they were still having issues. But the point was more around the network at that point and these little devices that people in particular parts of the emerging markets were using. We're still having problems around the same, story, which is like heavy pages, not being able to access them in these same particular markets. But we're hopefully trying to make sure that developers understand and create better experiences, because that time 10 years ago, people were waiting like 2 minutes to get like a frame of a video.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's I'm a big fan of that sort of conversation, emerging markets, and best practices, because those best practices really translate well to what we're doing right now.
100%. 100%. Yes, thank you. Appreciate that perspective. Now, before we wrap up, I'm going to do a series of 9 quick questions and answers. Some text, some not. Yeah.
Okay,
Ready?
9. Let's go.
All right, here we go. Okay, number 1. What's your favorite open source product?
Web page test. Next.
Number 2. Okay, so we already discussed. I know running is a big part of your life. What do you love most about running?
Man, outside of the fitness, I think it provides just sort of like this it's time to myself. I used to run in a group, and when the pandemic came, I was like, okay, I'm going to run on my own. But now I actually enjoy running on my own, and it's just like the freedom. Best case scenario, I always tell people it's a hot day. I'm just in a t-shirt. I mean, I'm in shorts, no t-shirt, my watch, a hat, my shoes. I think there's something like super awesome about that.
I love that. Okay, number three is related. Number three is, do you have a metric or a PR that you're proudest of around running?
I mean, it's my currently standing PR, which is a 1919 5K. I'm trying to break that this year. So, I'm going on record, and I'm trying to break it this year.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Thank
Where
you.
did
Pardon me?
where did you get the 1919? Was it in Toronto?
It was in Toronto, actually, despite the fact that I was in the same physical, fitness the week after or 2 weeks after, and I went to Chicago and didn't do it. But that's the mental part of running that disappoints me sometimes. So it's kind of tough.
For sure. Okay, number four. And speaking of being proud of things, what
Mhm.
what work in your career are you proudest of?
Um, I'll say, well, geez, um, I'll bring it back to tech. I think the opportunity to work in the space where you're really introducing concepts to people, I think is definitely fulfilling. I like to use this particular phrase, which is allowing people to delight in discovery, because they don't always know everything, but being able to show them or show people a particular um, either resource or a technology, I think is awesome. And I feel like I've taken on a little bit of my parents' sort of like uh, influence, because they are retired educators, and somehow I've suddenly find myself enjoying that part of the work.
That's amazing. I feel similarly about teaching.
Okay.
Uh, number five, if you this one came up in the last episode we did, and I loved
All
it. So
right.
if you had to move to another city tomorrow, not where would you go?
Good question. Um, you know, I'm a big fan. Okay, so I'm a big fan of uh, a diverse fabric in a society. So I love diversity. I love festivals from all sort of like communities. Um, this might sound weird, but I'm gonna say London, England, um, because I find it's pretty diverse. Uh, I'm of Caribbean background, and there's a huge Caribbean community there. So I know I can get my rice and peas, oxtail, gravy, jerk chicken. I can get doubles, samosas. Like, let's go. So I'd say London, England first. Um, Shockingly, I would go a complete U-turn and say Los Angeles second. But there's a part about Los Angeles I kind of like as well.
Okay, yeah, very different cities, but also
Very,
they, they both
yeah.
have great parts about them for sure.
Oh,
For sure.
totally.
Okay, what are we on? We're on number six. What is the best or most useful advice that you've received throughout your career?
Oh man, it's a good question. Uh, I feel like I don't know if he actually gave me the advice, but there's a gentleman that so I used to work in music, and I remember I watched an old episode of a show, and um, this gentleman was like, "Hey, if you're out there and you're doing X, Y, and Z, don't be scared. Just hit me up. we got to, things have to get done. Like, it was long story, but basically he kind of taught me to sort of like go for it, you know. And I spoke to him after I met him and spoke to him about it later on. I'm like, dude, I'm in this industry because of this TV show you were on, and you said this. And he was like, wow, but and I've taken sort of like that idea places. And I think it kind of confirmed some things that I'd been doing already. I'll give you a quick example. I played hockey, you know, and I sort of like just went for it. And I found myself sometimes in spaces that, didn't necessarily look inviting, but again, I went for it. Uh, and that's something that I sort of keep to this day, and I try to share it with folks in particular terms so that it's comestible.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I was like, we could do a whole show on that answer.
Oh,
Okay, so
definitely.
number 7, where is the most memorable place that you've traveled to?
Ooh, good question. Good question. Man. Good question. You know, I'm gonna say it is for sure Europe. And I'm gonna say Spain right now. And I went to Barcelona. This is when I was actually still working in music, and I remember being down there with some friends. Uh, great musicians I knew. We got a place together and stuff. And, near the end, we sort of scattered and, we went our different ways. But I remember spending another 2 or 3 days sort of like with myself and just like taking it all in. And it was like one of those moments where you're just kind of like on your own, and you're sort of like thinking deeply about like everything. And it stayed with me to this very day, to the point where I always talk about going back to Barca, and so I'm going to say Barcelona.
That one's on my list. My sister's been there for work a few times in the last
Hmm.
year, and she's really been hyping it up. Like, okay, I guess I got to get over there.
I'd recommend it, especially the summertime, dude. It was awesome, and I was there for a music festival, and it was, well, I've gone a few times, but that first time I was there for a music festival, and it was like amazing.
'Cause I mean, the beach is really close to the city, right?
Oh, dude, I remember I basically got off the plane and went straight to the beach. My friends were like, "Yo, we're here." I'm like, "Boom," and
Right.
it was awesome. Like, I could talk about so much there.
That's great. Okay, number 8. What is the worst mistake you've made as a developer?
Oh man, it was probably at this agency, and I'm trying to think like it might have been just a project that I just did not sort of like get right. You know, I think I was pretty green at the time too, and they were like, "Oh, you can just handle this on your own," and I didn't. And I just remember doing a massive face palm, and my lead, who was like 3 seats down from me, had to finish it up, and I was just like not happy, you know,
Fix
because
them.
I knew everyone else was pissed.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Did you feel like you pulled anything away from that you didn't do or did better as a result?
Um, I think again, it was a mixture of like potential nervousness and whatnot. So it was more like just try to stay sharper. You know.
Yeah. Okay. All right, last one. Last one. This is a hypothetical question.
All
It is
right.
you can take or you can host a lunch
Mhm.
with any person doesn't have to be alive because this is hypothetical world here. Who are you taking to lunch?
Ooh. Um. You know, there are many people I think would be pretty interesting, but this is going to be potentially a boring answer.
Love both.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I would really, and I don't want to get like, the serious him, and not like on camera him potentially, but I would really love to have like a very deep conversation with Barack Obama, because I think there's a Barack that the um, TV news audience is familiar with, but um, I think when off camera, I think we could have a much different conversation, because I think he's acutely aware of some of the challenges. And I don't believe we ever got, you know, the real Obama, you know. And I think I'd love to have a conversation about how he feels about, current climates, what is required, I think, to uh, lift the Black community, because I think he was certainly trying to do his best to do that. And but he had challenges from across the aisle, as they like to say,
Mhm.
um, amongst the many others. So I would love to have like a sort of like unedited, fireside chat.
Yeah, that would be an amazing lunch. Absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Totally. I don't think I'd be eating because I'd be talking so much.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. All right. Well, Henri, thank you so much. This was a great show. I had a ton of fun. Now, before we go, just a quick chance to plug yourself and anything you're working on. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you.
First thing, I mean, I still believe Twitter is a wonderful place. That's how I things got sort of like grinding for me. So you can see on the screen, that's my Twitter handle at Henri Helvetica. Um, Ironically, we've been doing these streams. We did them all last year at Webpage Test. We're going to start it all over. First one's tomorrow, actually. It's going to be on Twitch and YouTube, but I'll tweet that out later on today. And we're just going to get back to sort of like going through what a particular audit is like, the things that we can spot on a page and whatnot. Again, it's that kind of practice, uh, the ability to just look at different scenarios each and every time, and kind of like remembering, what they look like, and sort of like moving forward. So that's part of like the performance literacy that I talk about. Outside of that, I'm shockingly on LinkedIn. You know, I had to do that last year, and pardon me.
That place, yes, yep.
Yeah, exactly. But I'll be honest, I'm best on Twitter. So if anyone has any questions regarding web performance, I'll be happy to speak to them. And hell, we might even jump on a call. So
Fantastic. All right. And for those of you listening in, this is a quick reminder that these shows are now recorded live on the first and third Tuesdays of each month. We tend to do them at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States, which is 5 p.m. GMT. And then later syndicate these shows on CFE.dev and YouTube in video form, and then audio format wherever you happen to get your podcasts. We're going to be back here on February 21st making another attempt to try to record with Salma Alam Naylor. We had a little bit of a snafu the first time around, but she's going to help us determine what is the best JavaScript framework. It's going to be kind of an extension of the talk she gave at Jam Dev, which she called the most controversial talk of the conference. So that'll be a good time. But until then, from all of us at CFE.dev, thank you for joining us for this show, and we'll see you next time.
Sean, thanks for having me.